Jock of the Bushveld, the classic tale by Percy FitzPatrick, is a story many South Africans grew up with. It follows FitzPatrick's journey to the old Transvaal goldfields and the bond he forms with a puppy named Jock. The book was adapted into a feature film in 1986, produced by Duncan MacNeillie. And Duncan is now revisiting the film in a completely new way, using AI to reimagine and restore this beloved story for a new generation. And he joins us in the studio today. Hi, Duncan.
Hi, Linda.
But I think before we start talking, Duncan, we need to take a look at a clip from the reworked version.
I think I'll keep this at all.
The world is full of strange behavior. Every man has to be his own savior. I know I can make it on my own if I try, but I'm searching for a great heart to stand me by underneath the African sky. A great heart to stand me by. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart to hold and keep me by. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart under African sky.
Duncan, this is so fascinating. It's so clear. So instead of reshooting the film, you've chosen to recreate it using AI. So what sparked that decision?
The decision was sparked by the fact that my original master was destroyed, and what was available, or the best I had, was not up to standard. And for years now, I've tried tests looking at upgrading and upresing and all the rest, and nothing really worked. But with AI and the small team that I'm working with, well, not the small team, but a team that I'm working with in Johannesburg, have managed to kind of, I think, deal with the latest technology. It changes all the time, and produce something that really looks good. So now we need to just press ahead.
What is the biggest technical challenges or creative challenges in using AI?
I think as a norm, one considers AI as having a slightly plasticky kind of look, or a lot of people can pick it up. I think with this process, it really just maintains the original look and feel, and it does justice to the original look, and doesn't kind of have a sense of a recreation. It just looks like the original.
You mentioned the condition of the film where you've lost, your original. So how much restoration was needed before AI could even be applied?
I think, what you have to do is just, blow the image up in the best quality that you can. And then AI takes over. But it's not as simple, which I think a lot of people imagine is, click the button and it just performs. There's a certain amount of correction, grading, and there's issues that pick up. So, one has to just make sure that when you deliver it, it's up to the standard for the delivery items that the platforms now request or require.
So how long is this reworking process taking?
I think that for the last year and a half, I've been discussing with a friend who worked with me on the animated Jock, Tion Franken, who's now joined Rob at the Chocolate Tribe, a studio in Johannesburg. And they, initially he said to me, look, wait a year. I waited a year. And that was almost a year ago when we kind of revisited. And the technology is advancing at such a rate that, what we're doing now will be made probably easier in a few months' time. But, I think that we at a point where we now need to say, right, let's press ahead and go and do it.
And is it completed?
No. We've just run the test. My daughter, Christy, who's working with me, has done an edit, just a 1-minute edit, just for testing. So that's laid to the original song which Johnny wrote for me, Spirit of the Great Heart. And
Johnny Clegg.
yeah. So, I mean, Johnny, long story, but in terms of the music, when I finished the film, I knew I had a good film, and it was a small budget in those days, and I think in today's terms it would be also extremely small. But I looked, I met with Johnny and said, how much would you need? And he said, so much. And I went out to raise that, and then signed a deal. And we went ahead with the music. So it was great to work with him. And over the years, I worked a lot with Johnny.
So do you have a sense of when it might be released?
And we're looking at hopefully having it ready by the end of the year. I'm hoping to meet with agents and distributors when I'm in South Africa in July. June, July. So, yeah, I think that we'll just kind of see how the tests go. As soon as they're ready and the picture's complete, we will be ready to kind of discuss distribution.
What about funding? Have you received some backing for it?
We are looking at the moment for funding. It's also, we've kind of, thanks to a special deal from the Chocolate Tribe, they're offering an amazing price. Really just to, in their view, just to bring this sort of what was regarded as a classic in South Africa back to life. So I appreciate their input.
How do you think audiences will respond? Does the story still resonate today?
Linda, when it first came out, it was a great success. It was at a time where South African product was literally banned internationally due to apartheid. Disney showed interest. I flew to London, met with Disney. They said, okay, they like it. Went off to LA. And long story short, they didn't really want anything to do with the South African product, quite rightly. And I think that's the rest is history. So unfortunately, or maybe a blessing in disguise, maybe we have a new opportunity here. So it was pretty much blocked internationally and hardly had any viewing. When I made the film, and I initially met with Desmond Niven, he was a wonderful person and very supportive. But I think when I first discussed my interest in making this, he was supportive, but almost dismissive. He the film, I believe it had 6 attempts at being made. So he kind of, we left it there. And so when it worked, he was, obviously like all of us, very excited that, we managed to finish this and make something good. And he also at that time launched a sort of a new edition of the book, sort of almost a collector's item. And the book, he told me, which went from nothing to the biggest seller behind the Bible. So in South Africa, that's quite good. So now, hopefully this works and it picks up again.
Did you have to adjust the language or the tone? Because those were different times.
Yeah, they were. I think that language. I think it's a period picture. I think that there's sensitivity to obviously certain language, but it's we've taken care of that, and I think that one has to not lose the authenticity of the time and the period and the way things were. It is. I believe it's important to maintain that without offending anyone.
And how would you release it? Would it be a Netflix or big screen?
Yeah, it would look. Netflix would be a great choice, or any of those. Amazon, any of the major studios that would kind of hopefully show interest. So we'll wait and see.
So without giving anything away for people, maybe a younger generation who might not have read the book or seen the film, does the ending remain the same? Because quite sad.
Yeah, it is. It is. I remember, sitting watching a cricket match once, the Northern Transvaal rugby side behind us, and this guy tapped me on the shoulder and he said to me, "You made me cry." And I was shocked. I didn't know what he was talking about, but someone had mentioned that I'd made the film. And yeah, so even if a big, strong guy like that could cry, there were a lot of parents that found that trying. But at the end of the day, it's a story about a loving relationship between a man and a dog. And we've kept that. And I think it's important. And, it worked well. I think it's always important to shed tears in films when the time is right. But overall, I think a great story of hope and courage.
How do you protect copyright on this? Because I've actually seen little clips or shortened versions on YouTube of the original film.
Yeah, we are actually busy right now clearing that. I've done it once before and it's popped up again. And it's also one of the main reasons, Linda, is that the quality that's on there is very poor. So, we literally, right now are finalizing that cleanup with YouTube. So that should be off very soon.
So are you going to release it in South Africa first?
Yeah, I think so. I think because it's it would be, there's been such an interest. I think according to SterKinekor, who released it, it was one of their longest running films. And it's, when I say longest running over the period, it had a great run. And then, after that, it also, over the years, has been their longest running success, according to the previous head of the company. So I would, hopefully we can actually revive that. And I believe the interest is potentially still there, and there's another generation.
That generation sort of has this nostalgia for the past as well. So it might, tap well into that.
Yeah, I think so. And when I made the film, Linda, there was obviously the boycott on South African product at the back of my mind. But I always felt if it's made well, and the story is authentic and it works, that due to the fact that it is a period film, that it has the chance to be revived. So it's been a long time, but this hopefully will be that opportunity.
So is the book still being sold in prescriber schools?
Yeah, look, it's still sold, but like with anything that, if there's good marketing opportunity, the sales increase. So I think that it's a wonderful book. It's stood the test of time, but so many classics just become lost on the shelves. So maybe it'll give it a slight revival as well.
And also maybe a revival of the song. That's happened, that people came out with a song in the 80s and then suddenly it's in a new series and people just latch onto it.
Yeah, it was an amazing song, which is Spirit of Great Heart. It was, as you know, written by Johnny, but it became almost like and this wasn't my imagination. I mean, so many people started to regard it almost as a second anthem. And for Johnny, he said to me, as we kept in touch, and over the last few years of his life, we saw a lot of each other. But he said to me, it's been the most successful, I believe financially, the most successful song he'd ever written. So yeah, it'd be nice for that to be revived.
Who is Duncan MacNeillie? Tell us a bit about your background.
I grew up on a farm in Zululand. I spoke Zulu, pretty much as well as I did English. And I think that period, and my parents' love for the Zulu people, and obviously we grew up with that. It was a big influence in our lives. I got to meet Ian Player through my dad. My dad was chairman of the Wildlife Society in Zululand. And Ian became a good friend of mine in later years. He was a good friend of my dad's, but I shot, my first films were made with Ian. And he was almost a mentor in so many ways, environmentally, which is one of my real passions, film and conservation. And he was a great supporter. And when I got to making the film, the irony is that Standard Bank were my main support in financing the film. And at the time, Etienne de Villiers had just been appointed by Kerzner as the guy to head up or represent the film industry. And I was excited about that because I liked Kerzner's business-like approach. It's kind of unforgiving, but, if you're going to do something, do it properly. And I remember one of the members at the bank phoned me and said, we've had to pull the plug. And I said, why? He said, we asked advice, and they said that this was, you're a first-time filmmaker and you don't have the experience. My experience, it was my first feature film, and my only experience was commercials and documentaries with Ian and Makulu, his old Zulu friend. So it was fair comment, but the irony is that Etienne went on to head up Disney, I believe, in London. So he actually, through the success in South Africa, invited me over, and it was considered. But as I said, politically it was unacceptable. And there was that. But it was thanks to Ian Player, who at the time, he just phoned me and he said, look, I had a feeling you needed to talk to me. And I said, no, the bank had pulled out. And he knew one of the top guys in the bank, and maybe I shouldn't mention his name, but they were great supports at the end. And the decision was reversed. Money stayed in place, and we made the film. So thanks to the bank at that time, it was great start for my career.
Apart from this movie, what else are you doing now?
I'm writing a book on the Anglo-Zulu War. It's not really on them. It's the relationship between an English-Scottish guy, in fact, John Dunn and Gletchwire. It's a story which has, it was offered to me or discussed and promoted to me many years ago. And Ian Player used to always continually say to me, you've got to make the big Zulu film. And I said, you either do it really big or you don't do it. So I'd written a screenplay, and I believe it's good. But the reality, after attending a screenwriters conference in London, was that people actually would rather have a book. Well, Los Angeles, and a lot of film people actually, because there's not the, I could write a screenplay and someone could say, no, we want a 3-part or 5-part series. So it's a start again process. So it ultimately, with my daughter, I decided to encouragement from her, and she's very good. So we're working together on that, and hopefully by the end of the year, close to when I would like to release this film, we will release this book. And it's an exciting story. It's actually I think growing up and understanding the Zulus, the little that I do, gives me a good base. But again, it's thanks to Ian Player, who was passionate about it, and some input from Johnny, certainly when I was researching it. It's a story which has got huge pace. It involves a conflict which came about, and the irony is that the English loved the Zulus. They had a joint admiration through bravery, and the one thing that the Zulus have always admired is courage. And I love the old way. Everything's changed in the world, but regardless, the old Zulu order was amazing.
And what is the book called?
It's going to be, at this stage, a working title is The White Zulu. And I know that Johnny Clegg was often referred to as the White Zulu, but this man was a proper White Zulu. His whole life changed. When he crossed the Tugela from Natal into Zululand, it was a meaningful crossing that he never looked back, and the war divided and unfortunately split the wonderful relationship he had with Cletchwire. But I think that again, Cletchwire was sent over to England. He used to have apparently a picture of the Queen Victoria, in his abode, and he just said, "Listen, I commit to the Queen. I want to meet her." And finally, he was granted passage, and he came across and met with Queen Victoria, and the English people loved him. There was great press and coverage of him at the time, and the English were very annoyed at the handling of that war. But that's a long story. And I think that the English-Zulu relationship has remained strong historically.
Duncan MacNeillie, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Linda.